So today we chapter 15. We are doing the last set of three verses. I start with verse number 18. यस्माक्षरमतीतोऽहम् अक्षरादपि चोत्तमः अतोऽस्मि लोके वेदे च प्रथित पुरुषोत्तमः. So now Lord Krishna goes on to say that since I transcend the perishable and I am even higher than the imperishable, I am therefore proclaimed in the world and in the Vedas as Purushottama, the supreme being. So let's take this up word by word. Yasmat, as. Kshar is what is perishable. Atit is what is past or what is transcended. Aham, I. Aksharat is, Akshar is imperishable. Aksharat becomes than the imperishable. Api even. Cha and Uttam best. Ataha therefore. Asmi I am. Loke in world. Vede in the Vedas. Cha and Prathit is declared, proclaimed. Purushottam, the Uttam Purush or the Supreme Being. So, since I transcend the perishable and I'm even higher than the imperishable, I am therefore proclaimed in the world and in the Vedas as Purushottam, the Supreme Being. So, let's chant it together. यस्माक्षरमतीतोऽहम् अक्षरादपि चोत्तमः अतोऽस्मि लोके वेदे च प्रथित पुरुषोत्तमः. So, as we just recap, the last part of the chapter, see, the chapter is titled Purushottam. So, we are talking about the characteristics of that Brahman that we find difficult to comprehend and understand. Lord Krishna is trying to explain to Arjun that difficult or that great secret. So the last part of the chapter, after we have covered, how the structure of the kshar and the akshar, you remember the inverted fig tree, that's where the chapter starts. So how that power energizes both the microcosm and the macrocosm. Now we are going beyond those. So the last part of this chapter is describing Brahman or the supreme reality as that power which transcends both the perishable and the imperishable. So once again, Kshar is what is perishable, and it comprises of our body, mind, intellect, and vasanas. So it comprises the gross, subtle, and causal bodies. Everything is kshar, perishable. Akshar is the imperishable. It is that pure consciousness that enables our body, mind, and intellect and the gross, subtle, and causal bodies. So, all our equipment and all components of our body and all our bodies, the gross, subtle, and causal. Now, the pure consciousness is conditioned by desires and vasanas in living beings. So we've been trying to understand that we are all actually, the pure consciousness is within all of us, but it is covered by our vasanas and desires, and therefore we are manifested as individual beings, as different human beings, as different creatures. So the combination of consciousness and matter, because the vasana is part of the kshar, the kshetra. So it is matter. So consciousness and matter produces conditioned consciousness or the jivatma. So another way to understand this is that the pure consciousness, that God, that Paramatman, is actually not conditioned by Prakriti, matter. It's immaculate, it's without properties, it's beyond properties. But when it manifests as a being, the individual consciousness which is manifested, that is conditioned by Prakriti. So that is the layer which covers that Paramatman and appears as an individual being, or as an individual being or a set of beings, whatever. Now, lok, that is the word that is used in this verse, means, of course, the worlds, but more importantly, it means all our experiences, the various fields of experiences. So, all that we experience is a component of that world that we are. And interestingly, if you just think about it, each one of us, though present physically on earth, because of our own set of desires and vasanas, has is actually living in a different world. So my world is different from each one of your world, will be different from the neighbors, my neighbor's world, because that the layer of vasanas and desires is different. Though physically we are on earth, we are in fact in the same neighborhood also. So this is the conditioned consciousness, and these are the different worlds or lok that we are encountering or experiencing. That Paramatman, the Purushottam, however, is beyond all these experiences, is beyond these worlds or world. So, though pervading and enabling the world and all its limitations, actually, it transcends everything. It is beyond the world and its limitations. And the highest reality is not only beyond the change or the kshar, but is also beyond the changeless, the akshar. So that Paramatman is beyond the perishable and the imperishable. It is that absolute reality. And the Vedas, which are the holiest of our scriptures, and not only Vedas, I think all religions actually talk about it, they attempt to explain this pure consciousness or that Purushottam, the Supreme Purusha, the Supreme Reality, or the Absolute Reality. So that was verse number 18. Moving on to verse number 19. यो मामेवं सम्मूढो जानाति पुरुषोत्तमम् स सर्वविद् भजति मां सर्वभावेन भारत. So the verse translates to those undeluded who know me thus as Purushottam, the Supreme Being, they all knowing worship me with all their being, O Bharataha. So let's take this up word by word. Ya, those, Mam, me, Evam, thus, Asamud. So mood is deluded, Asamud becomes undeluded, Janati is what you know, Purushottam, that supreme being, Saha, he or that person, Sarvit, with is to know, Sarv is all, so Sarvit becomes all knowing, Bhajati worships, Mam me, Sarva Bhavin. Bhavin is our expressions, being bhavnas. So Sarv Bhavin becomes with everything that we have, with all our emotions, with everything. Sarv Bhavin, with our whole being. Bharat is the name that Lord Krishna is using for Arjun here. So those undeluded who know me thus as Purushottam, Supreme Being, they all knowing worship me with all their being, O Bharata. So let's chant together. यो मामेवं सम्मूढो जानाति पुरुषोत्तमम् स सर्वविद् भजति माम सर्वभावेन भारत. So, see, when we are influenced, or when we like, or when we love a person or an object, anything, it is based on our understanding of that thing or person. So, when you love someone, you like that person, or you admire someone, it is because you appreciate certain qualities and you relate with those qualities, okay, and you maybe want to inculcate those qualities in you, so you hold that person or object, or demigod, like we have different gods for different things, so we hold those people, we revere those people, or we are devoted towards them, or we worship them. So basically, our love or devotion is based on our understanding of that thing or person or demigod, whatever. It applies to anything that we are devoted towards. Now, because we appreciate a person, so for example, let's say a child who wants to excel in tennis would maybe have Roger Federer or Djokovic as their idols. So then we start trying to understand more about that person or that thing. So because that person is set as our idol, we try to understand, develop a greater understanding. And of course, that, uh, normally results in a greater devotion towards that person when we start appreciating that how that person came up, or how that person, from what humble background, for example, he came up and started doing so well through sheer self effort. It motivates us further, and we become more and more devoted to that person. Of course, in certain cases, it can work the other way around as well. So let's not talk of that. Normally, whatever ideal or person or that object that we have picked up to revere or respect or admire, the more we understand that person, the more that feeling of reverence and devotion increases within us. Now, let's talk of that supreme being, that Purushottam. When we set that as our goal, and when we start trying to comprehend, we actually start becoming more and more, or developing greater devotion, or we proceed further on the path of devotion for that Paramatman, which is energizing everything that we see around us, and maybe the smaller goals that we had set along our way, along our path in the world. So we start understanding and appreciating that great power. So we move further on our path of devotion, which leads us to trying to understand that Paramatman with whatever we have available, because actually God is beyond all these faculties and facilities that are available to us, beyond the scriptures. But nevertheless, we try to get as much knowledge as possible. So, this is the path of knowledge which is pushing us, or making us progress further on our journey towards understanding that Paramatman. So, as we understand that Paramatman, our devotion becomes greater and greater till we understand, till it culminates and we understand that there is nothing that we need to know now, nothing more. Beyond the Supreme Being, there is nothing more that we need to know. At that point of time, we are completely undeluded. We know that this is what it is, that is to be known. There is no confusion in our minds. And we understand this is where the knowledge ends. And therefore, in that state, we will worship that Supreme Being. that Purushottam with our entire being, because we understand the rest of my effort is actually a waste of my effort. It's waste of my energies. So I need to be devoted to that Paramatman with our whole being, our whole heart, and our whole vitality. And this actually verse is bringing together all the practices of Karma Yoga at the level of the body, Bhakti Yoga at the level of the mind, and Gyan Yoga at the level of the intellect. All these practices that we have been reading in the Bhagavad Gita and our other scriptures that lead us to our own purification. That means all the covering, the patina from us is removed, and we understand that what is it that we need to be seeking, and there is no confusion in our minds, and that's the only thing that we seek. So we have no selfishness at the level of the body, mind, and intellect, and we seek that Paramatman exclusively. There is no other thought. All thoughts will actually uh, take us to the thought of Paramatman. Whatever desires, whatever we have in the world, it will ultimately, uh, logically, it will lead us to Paramatman, and that's how we start thinking. So that is what verse number 19 means, translates to. Moving on to the last verse of the chapter, I will chant. इति गुह्यतमशास्त्रम् इदं मुक्तं मया नघ एतद्बुद्ध्वा बुद्धिमान् स्यात् कृतश्चय भारताः. So Lord Krishna goes on to say that thus this most secret science has been declared by me, O Anag, uh, sinless one, meaning Arjun. Knowing this, one becomes wise and fulfilled of duties, O Bharata. So, iti is thus, Guhyatamam is secret of secrets, or the most secret. Shastra is science. Idam, this. Uktam, declared, proclaimed. Maya is by me. Anag, name for Arjun, meaning a sinless one. Etad, this. Buddhva, buddhi is knowledge, or buddhva becomes having known. Buddhiman is the one who has that knowledge, or the wise one. Sayat becomes krit kritya. So, uh, the one who has accomplished or completed all duties, who has done all duties. Cha and Bharat is a name for Arjun. So, thus, this most secret science has been declared by me, O Anag. Knowing this, one becomes wise and fulfilled of duties, O Bharataha. So let's chant together. इति गुह्यतमं शास्त्रम् इदं मुक्तं मया नघ एतद्बुद्ध्वा बुद्धिमान् स्यात् कृतश्चय भारतः. So see, we started this chapter with the famous metaphor of the inverted Ashwatha tree to understand the manifested, which is the Kshar, or the perishable aspect of Brahman, which appears as the macrocosm. And then Lord Krishna went on to advise Arjun to cut asunder this firmly rooted tree with the axe of non attachment, so that the illusion is removed from us. The perishable aspect, something that is will it's always changing, will decay, will die, will go away, is removed, so that our focus is on what is not perishable. So essentially to free up our faculties to focus exclusively on our goal, which is God. So we start free up ourselves so that we can meditate and think about that Paramatman. After that, in the chapter, verses 7 to 11 actually talked about Lord Krishna explaining to Arjun how the Brahman pervades the microcosm, the Jivatmas, etc. And then we covered the Akshar aspect of Brahman, verses 12 to 15, the how he permeates everything, which is not um, which is not perishable. So all the perishable components, the kshar is actually permeated by this Brahman. Now in this, the last section from 15 onwards, and this verse, what is being explained to us is that Supreme Being transcends both the perishable and the imperishable, right? So now essentially the chapter is laying before us how to develop bhakti, because like I just mentioned, that you can be devoted once you start having understanding of your goal, whatever it is. A person or Paramatman is what our goal should be, but we need to understand our goal. So the Lord is telling us actually how to develop that bhakti. So that means we have to understand our goal, to understand that Purushottam, so that we develop reverence towards that and seek that God exclusively. So Lord Krishna tells Arjun that I have completed declaring the most secret science, right? Guyatamam Shastram. So that has been declared by him. See, the, why is it most secret? And this was detailed out to us in chapter 9, which was the Raj Vidya, Raj Guhya Yog, or the Yog of royal knowledge and royal secret. So that had listed out or detailed out for us that greatest knowledge and the greatest secret. Now, I will just recap what we had done then. Raj Vidya. So, royal knowledge. Royal here does not mean, okay, kingly maybe, but that means it's the greatest knowledge or the highest and noblest of all knowledges, because it is the substratum of all other knowledges. So, how? Because once we know that Paramatman, we know everything, because that is the Paramatman which enlivens all our knowledge receptors, our senses, perceptions, emotions, intellect, and our different states, the waking, dreaming, and deep sleep states. So, that knowledge is the king of knowledge. And Rajguhya, the royal secret, was the self is the most subtle. Actually, it's beyond even subtle. It's the most profound and it's unknown to everyone. This, despite we all being energized by that same Paramatman, still we are unaware. We know our body, mind, and intellect. We know how our body functions, and medical science is a proof of this, and also to a large extent our mind and intellect. But we don't even go into the realms of ourself, because it eludes all perceptions, emotions, and thoughts. So, whatever instruments we have, it is beyond that. Therefore, it is the greatest secret. And of course, for you may look up chapter 9, it had also detailed out the path to follow that royal knowledge and royal secret. Here, Lord Krishna is addressing Arjuna as Anag. Anag means without any sin. And here, in the current context, because Arjun is actually a recipient of this greatest knowledge or the royal knowledge, it means a steady minded and alert recipient. Bharat, as we've been talking about, Bharat is the original name of our country. Bha means light. Rat is one who is reveling in that. So Bharat becomes one who revels in that light, or the divine light, which refers to the knowledge, the that uh, Raj Vidya. So it is a nation which is engaged in the search of knowledge. And when Krishna is addressing Arjun as Bharat, it means a descendant of that great Bharat race. So Krishna concludes by stating that one who becomes wise, who has that knowledge, automatically is fulfilled of all duties by knowing this most secret science that has been declared by him. So, with that, we conclude the chapter.